welcome. Welcome to Careers Life in Yale's Career Reflections channel. Tonight's Thursday show is a spotlight on management consulting. And tonight I'm thrilled that we have three fantastic Yale alumni panelists, each of whom has established their careers in this fairly popular profession for our Yale alumni. My name is Yvette Solis Rivers. I graduated from Yale College in '96. I actually just recently joined the YAA Board of Governors, and I'm also on the Yale Club of Washington, D.C.'s board. And I'm one of the new producers for this channel with Corinne Krikorian, and we are just thrilled to welcome everyone to the show tonight. So before we get started with our program, just a few notes. We are recording the show, as you probably noticed, and this recording will be available on Yale's Vimeo channel if you want to watch the show again and again, or want to share it with your friends, family, other Yale alumni, please do. Also, please remember to stay muted, just so we have a nice, clean recording to share. I also wanted to thank some folks. I wanted to thank the YAA staff who is on tonight and helping us out, Chelsea and Kate and Steve Bloom. Thank you so much for everything you do. And I wanted to thank the Yale Club of Washington, D.C. for being a co-sponsor, helping to spread the word. Thanks so much to everyone. And then looking ahead to our topic next month, for those of you who are new to this Thursday night must-see Yale show, we have different channels, and this is the Career Reflections channel. And so we'll have a Career Reflections show once a month. And next month, the show will be on October 21st, and it will feature Josh Sheloff. Josh Sheloff is class of '93. He's an Emmy-winning filmmaker who has founded a company called Written Out Loud that teaches the timeless and powerful craft of storytelling. So I hope you can join us for that and other Thursday shows as well. And then finally, if you haven't already, I strongly encourage everyone to join YAA's Cross Campus. Cross Campus is an online community that YAA set up more than a year ago, I think. It has at least 16,000 Yaleys on there. It's a really wonderful opportunity to network with Yaleys who are pre-vetted. You don't have to search through all that LinkedIn stuff to figure out who's a Yalee. It's just a great way to connect. And it's crosscampus.yale.edu. So if you have not signed up, I strongly encourage you to do so. Okay, so tonight we are going to get a peek into the profession of management consulting through the lens of three different Yale grads, two who graduated from the Yale School of Management and one who graduated from Yale College. I actually just found out, I think it was yesterday, Steve sent me this information, that management consulting is, probably as expected, one of the most popular professions that Yale alums go into. It's actually the fifth most popular Yale alumni profession. And you know, it's a broad field. So when you say management consulting, it can mean so many different things, because basically what these consultants are is they're professional problem solvers, helping organizations improve performance, you know, with different industries, different business processes, different challenges, different types of organizations. And so it's really a really varied profession. And so tonight, we get to hear from these three unique professional journeys in this world. So our three panelists are Russell Ahrens, Yale College '96, Falake Fadiyome, SOM, class of 2018, and Daniel Yim, also SOM, class of '19. And our format is pretty straightforward. I'll start off by facilitating a conversation with our panelists, and then we'll open it up to the rest of you to ask questions on the screen, or you can enter a question in the chat at any time, and I will ask it for you. So yeah, let's start getting to know our panelists, and we will begin with Russell Ahrens. Russell is principal and co-founder at Themis Insight, a consultancy focused on strategy, data science, process improvement, and automation. And so Russell, why don't we just get started by you sharing a little bit about the work you do today, and what you enjoy most about it, and then we'll get to hear from the others next.
Sure. My main client is a part of the Defense Department, and what that means is Every day, there are new problems that, frankly, I don't really understand because I was never, I'm not a veteran. So I show up at work and I try to understand what's going on. I have to say that that in itself is what I love most, is that I never know what I'm doing at work. I show up to work and I have to figure out what's going on. I have to figure out what they need. And frankly, I need to figure out what I can provide that will make them better. My main client right now does what's called performance management, which does essentially business intelligence, data analysis, data science, to do value analysis, which is actually really complicated for the federal government because they don't have a dollar bottom line. So how do you judge value? Mm-hmm. At my company, so I feel like I have two jobs because I have my on-site job and then I have my company job, my at-home job. And so I have staff who are also on at site doing system engineering, doing compliance, some automation. It's just interesting that I always have to figure out what's next. What do I know that can add value? And sometimes that means learning something new.
Thank you, Russell. Sounds like never gets boring. I have so many questions for you, but let's hear from everybody a little bit, and I'll come back to you. So, Falake, how about you? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now, what you enjoy about it.
Sure. So I'm in Deloitte's insurance consulting practice, where I help our insurance clients formulate business strategies and implement, be it initiatives that would help transform their core capabilities. One of the areas I focus on is around data and analytics. And when you peel back the onion, similar to the point Russell made, is really helping the client understand what their issues are and then collaborating with them to come up with solutions to address it. A number of engagements I work on touch on people, process, and technology, where we're helping the client think about their transformation in general and how they can leverage their human capital to accelerate their transformation. What kind of technology and digitization can enable that, and how can they streamline and optimize their processes to get there? So that's kind of, big picture what I do for my clients. It looks different for every client, and we approach it from a different lens, depending on where they are in their transformation journey. What I enjoy the most is there's no day that's the same in my profession or in my engagements with my client. Regardless of how hard I try and predict, how things are going to pan out, it never pans out the same. So I've learned to live with it. But outside of that, I would say the one thing about management consulting that's very appealing is you work in teams. And for me, that's been a huge sell, just being able to learn from other smart practitioners, being able to partner with them on how we go to market and the solutions we bring to market has been very exciting, and it continues to be extremely appealing to me.
Yes, you bring up a great point about the continuous learning. And just so everyone knows, I'm also a management consultant, been in for more than 20 years. So I definitely know what you're talking about. And that's definitely one of the most appealing things about it, in my opinion, as well. Thank you, Falake. Daniel, what about you? What are you doing now, and what do you like about it?
Yeah, so I'm in public sector consulting. I have always been working with clients in the federal space for the most part, but I am working with a state and local government at the moment, working with one of the major U.S. cities to kind of recover from COVID-19 economic impacts. So that's been really interesting, especially because the initiatives that my client and his team is launching and working on really touches the people on the ground level. So the citizens, the protection, health and protection of the citizens, as well as the small business owners on the ground level, is really what we're focused on. So that's really has been really interesting for me. Wow. And working in the defense and intel space is really my core area of industry, and that's been very fulfilling because I've served in the military myself. I served on both enlisted and officer side as well as active and reserve side, but it has always been a little bit of I guess a regret, if you will, that I have not continued my service, but it feels like I am continuing my service because a lot of my clients are still in uniform. So that makes me feel real good about what I do. And that's really what I enjoy about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's the other component too. This, some areas within management consulting that you're actually helping people, helping people improve how they do their jobs, making things not so hard for them. So that's very rewarding. So now let's take a step back in time. We actually have, I understand we have some students on as well, current Yale students. So let's look back to when you were, when you were younger. What were your career aspirations when you were leaving high school? Like at what point did you decide to pursue a career in consulting? Or did you just stumble into it? Why don't we start with you, Russell?
So I guess after high school, if we go back that far, I wanted to be a writer. Specifically, I wanted to be a poet, but apparently eating is good too. And I guess I started my journey. I worked at a talent agency, and what I learned is I didn't like doing something that didn't create something, that didn't actually help someone. Because the whole point there was we took something, we sold it to someone else, we never talked about it again. And so it was transactional, but we didn't get involved in actually making something better. My second job was as an engineer at a helicopter company. And that was really interesting because we were making something, and I actually got to be on board the aircraft, and that was pretty interesting. But one day I realized that when I was showing up to work, I had solved all the problems. Not literally, but every time there was a new problem, it was the same as a problem that I'd seen before. It just had different names on it. And it was rare that I saw something that I hadn't seen before, or someone else hadn't seen before. And all my coworkers loved that. They loved the fact that at a certain point they were comfortable in their job. And for me, Falaki talked about the continuous learning and the journey. That was really critical to me. That at a certain point, I felt like there was no point in going into work because someone else could do that job. Fast forward, and as I said, I kind of stumbled into after a couple of degrees, I stumbled into some private sector consulting, and then finally some public sector consulting. And what I learned is working for another company, on site, you have to put the client first, and then corporately you have to put the company first. And there was nothing that for my ideas that I could advance my ideas. And so that's why I left the company and founded my own firm. And that's where I am. I mean, it's really been a journey of finding ways to do new things, or to, if I learn a new technique or take a class or learn this aspect of a tool, find a way to apply it and answer questions that people didn't even know they had. So it's just fun.
Wow, that's awesome, Russell. Thank you. Great. Flake, what about you?
So I would say I kind of stumbled on it, to be honest. Coming out of high school, I thought I wanted to become a doctor, and the medical field was kind of where my eyes was set, my sights were set on, and did that for a while. In college, in my first year, took a couple science classes and realized, what, it was fun, but it wasn't me. So transitioned to finance and accounting at the time, and that's how I ended up in, the professional services field. So started out my career in audit and quickly got bored of doing the same thing over and over again. with a public, one of the big four firms. And I remember working for a partner who joked and said, you know what, you have too many ideas to be an auditor. You're always trying to tell us what the problem is versus, just get the work done, which is, cut and dry. And so he joked about it, but one of my colleagues at the time was, had transitioned to management consulting. She was one person that encouraged me to look at management consulting as my next, be it move, so to speak. And that's kind of how I landed in it. And I've been in management consulting. Gosh, I don't want to date myself, but it's been a number of years now. With that being said, each year has looked very different for me. So there was a point in time where I served public sector clients and did that for a couple of years. And then I transitioned into a global role where I was actually working within Deloitte as part of their consulting arm for the global entity. So it was really a different experience, kind of solving very different problems. And then more recently, I transitioned back to serving, insurance clients, which is part of our financial services practice. So a very different industry in and of itself. Now, the one thing I would say that rings true is in each of those roles, I think the core of what I do is solving problems, right? Helping to identify it in some cases, and more importantly, solving it. And that's been something that I enjoyed. But as it relates to the point you made earlier, Yvette, I mean, management consulting is so broad, right? And so as you make the choice to pursue it as a career, it becomes critically important to brand yourself. So you're known for something. Be it in terms of what you bring to the market or an industry that you've specialized in and become very well versed at in terms of understanding the crux of the issues in the industry, things of that nature. So that's the one thing I would say is, even though I stumbled on it, it's become rather apparent that it's a craft, right? You kind of need to double down and be a steward or learner of how to identify and solve problems rather efficiently.
Right. Awesome. Thank you, Falake. All right, Daniel, how about you? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, Russell and Falake, you guys kind of set the bar a little too high for me. So for the audience, bring it down about 4 notches. So my career aspiration was to become a certified car mechanic.
Oh my goodness.
So that's what I did. Coming out of high school, I worked on cars professionally for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And I decided that next thing I want to do is work on aircrafts. At the time, my brother was serving in the Air Force, and he suggested that I go into the Air Force and work on aircrafts. But I never wanted to be my brother. I wanted to be me. So I said, hey, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna go into the Navy. And when I signed up and went to boot camp, it was 5 days before 9/11. September 6th, 2001, I went to boot camp, and 5 days later, we went from peacetime to wartime.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so at boot camp, we were told that there was going to be World War III and all that stuff. And but either way, sure enough, I was at a very young age, I was deployed to the Middle East, came home, deployed again. And at that time, I realized, hey, what I really wanted to do is to go to college.
Oh, that's
So that's what I
awesome.
did. And I ended up studying finance at UVA. That's where I learned about this career field called management consulting, because that's where everybody wanted to end up, either investment banker, management consulting, or accounting. So I tried banking through internships. And then I realized, okay, well, I've tried that, and I don't know what this management consulting is about. I took some classes and I really liked it, and got my first job. And yeah, I've been in management consulting ever since. But with my military background, I have been working in the defense and intel space.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you are selling yourself a little too short, Daniel. You have an amazing story. Well, thank you so much. All right, so the next thing I was hoping you all could share, and I think Falake, you started to allude to some of this, but especially for the folks who might be considering going into management consulting, what have you, and also some that are just starting out. I bet there's some folks that are already, in the field, maybe starting out, looking to see, get some advice. What have you found to be sort of keys to success in this field? Just from your own experiences. I know all three of you have moved around a bit. You obviously ended up so far in different places, but what have you found to be some keys to success so far? Russell?
So I guess that there are, two major threads. There's being adaptable, always kind of rolling with the punches. I think that it's come up a couple of times that we're solving problems, but honestly, frequently we don't know what the problems are, and your client doesn't know what the problem is, or they're misspecifying the problem. And so every day you really have to be looking to see, well, what is the real problem, and then what can I do? And sometimes that means going out of your comfort space. It could be writing a strategy one day and writing code the next day. It could be doing finance one day, or learning the congressional budget justification book the next. The idea, and that's a little bit of an exaggeration of day to day, but the idea is sometimes you need to know a little bit of everything, and sometimes you need to know a lot of one thing, and you have to be willing to go in both directions. I guess the other thread for success is always looking for opportunity. I kind of work with two different types of peers, of other consultants. I think of them as the tactical, they get an action, they do an action, they wait for the next action. And then there's the strategic, where they're always thinking ahead for, why is this action coming in? What is it going to be used for? And how do I make it better? Or how do I get ahead of it next time? So either I never have to do it again, I can automate it, or I can make it better and really answer what the underlying question is. So I guess adaptability and I don't want to call it opportunism because that's bad, but always looking for opportunity.
It's not necessarily bad.
Well, okay. And I guess embedded in that is never being satisfied, always wanting to learn more or do more. And I guess fundamentally, if I had to condense that, I know I said two threads, but here's the third one, listening. It's listening to the client, listening to your peers. If you keep talking, as I'm doing right now, you don't learn anything. You only learn something by listening to what someone else says. So,
really great points, Russell. Thank you. Well, okay. What about you? What have you learned along the way?
Yeah, I think Russell has touched on some really good ones. I'll add to the list. From where I sit, I think it's being able to connect with people. Because at the end of the day, when I think about what I do day to day, it's really working closely with teams to come up with the solutions, but also collaborating with my clients to better understand what the issue is, what the problem is, and being able to build that trust and relationship rather quickly, right? To get to done, so to speak. So from where I sit, I think what I've seen successful consultants do is being able to bridge that gap and connect with different personalities, but also use that as an opportunity to identify what their pain points are, what the challenges are, get a better scope of what the issue is, and then using that to build a really solid solution and keeping that relationship warm going forward. So that's one thing that I would say. And then the other piece that I have to bring up is, an individual who easily gets bored of doing the same thing, you're a prime candidate for management consulting, because as Russell stated, there is that need to be adaptable, flexible, but also just having the hunger to learn and try new things and being outside of your comfort zone, which is probably like 90% of my day. So that's the other point I would say is just, having that eagerness to learn and to be able to collaborate and work really well with people around, be it solutioning, really identifying problems and bringing different ideas together. Those would be the two. And then just around that whole theme would be networking, right? Because it's also knowing who you can tap into to address the various be it solutions or problems that you're trying to solve for. And so building that network within, you know, your organization or the industry you're in, but also having, you know, a network of folks outside of that you can go to get some new learnings and be able to draw parallels between what you've seen in your industry and other industries would be equally important.
Awesome. Fantastic points, Vlaka. Thank you. So Daniel, anything to add? That's a lot. Those are a lot of ideas right there. What are your thoughts? Anything different that you've encountered?
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is something that I have not personally have done, but I have seen success people by doing this in management consulting. That some of my peers who started in consulting with me had advanced rather more quickly and more successfully by not jumping around too much. That's something that I have done. But on the flip side, those who stuck around with the thick and the thins of, you know, one client account or a set of partners who leads that effort, if you stick with them and there's a team of folks who are working on, you know, certain engagement with you, you would always see them come in and go out. And if you're that person who kind of stick around all along, there's really a good opportunity for you to end up leading certain aspects of that account or that project. So I've seen a lot of success in that front. And I wish someone had told me that early on in my career. I could have tried doing that myself, but I have not. But I mean, that's something that I have observed because, you know, just like Russell and Falaki, you know, I've enjoyed working on different projects, learning about different client spaces, and I got bored easily working on one thing. So, and I thought that it was really the point of getting into management consulting was to try different things. But again, on the flip side, there's different upside to management consulting and management consulting career.
Did you feel like you moved around too much early on?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, I've moved 3 times. The first time I moved, there was no real good reason why I would have moved. So if I could go back in time, I wouldn't have moved. Because it takes time to build up your network, your reputation in one firm. But when you go to another firm, you start all over again, right? I mean, no matter how much experience that you have under your belt, you have to kind of be that new guy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, I'm surprised no one said work your tail off as being a critical success factor.
That's a given. Yvette. That's the reason why we're in equality. Yeah, that's a given.
That's you know. So go ahead.
One thing that I like about the side of the industry that I'm at is my work is on client site. The moment that I leave, I have my own company that I have to do work for. I have a lot of work that I'm doing there, but that's essentially because I want to, not because I have to. The client stuff is left at the client, and I think that a lot of that is because of the sector that I'm in. I know that a lot of people in management consulting don't get to say that. They are on call essentially 24 hours a day. But and I don't travel. So Vlaki,
I know, Russell, I think we need to trade places sometime.
we're hiring.
Experience on that front.
Russell, you just said we're hiring. Okay.
I'm just saying, but no, but in all honesty, it really is, you know, so that the fact that you need to go into a room that you know very little about and you have to very quickly become the expert, it really creates an environment that when you're not at work, you're excited, you are working internally because you're trying to figure out what's next and how do you become that expert very quickly. So how do you position yourself?
And I think some of what you're saying really speaks to that, what I was talking about, this being a really broad field. I mean, I think in general, there's a stereotype in management consulting. First of all, you're talking about like the large consultants, like we're talking about Deloitte, even Gartner, IBM, et cetera. There's an understanding that when, especially for folks who are coming right out of college, I mean, they're really, really working long hours. I remember when I was in my 20s, I mean, minimum of 60 hours a week for sure, right? Like 60 to 70 hours a week. And maximizing billability, and that's pretty common.
Yeah.
But then I think that what's great about the field is you can go in different directions where, and that's kind of what we see also. Russell, one probably was part of what inspired you to start your own company, right? So that you weren't being like milked like indefinitely by some other company. But there's so much, especially, well, I'm sure this is on all over the country, but particularly in the DC area, there's just like so much opportunity that people can find the kind of environment that works for them. Even though I was working 60, 70 hours a week in my 20s, I eventually got to a place where, because I had really worked hard in that period, earned a reputation, I could pick and choose and ultimately get to clients and contracts that would, were not so time consuming, right? So there's so much variety within the field. I definitely want the students that are listening to know that for sure. And you can kind of hear it from what everyone is saying. Even like Daniel, you were talking about how some people really find success in sticking with one job. Now, I kind of took the opposite. I in my 20s, somebody didn't pay me what I wanted to be paid. Within 2 years, I found the next one that would pay me better. So I think I was at 5. This is not a good example, students, by the way, but I think I was at 5 different companies by the time I was 30, but I was making what I wanted to make. And I was like, okay, fine. But you have to be careful, like Daniel said, because you also want to make sure you're building expertise and you're building those relationships. I somehow miraculously did not burn a bridge, but that's, always a risk when you're doing stuff like that. And it does not look good on resumes, usually. If somebody sees 2 years, 2 years here, 2 years there, sometimes it can burn you. But anyway, so, okay, I'm going to ask one short question for some folks, but I want everyone on the call to think about what questions you have for our panelists while I'm asking this. And go ahead, start using the raise your hand feature here if you want to ask a question for the panelists, or you can enter a question in the chat. But while you're thinking, just one thing to all three of you, and anyone who wants to answer can answer, but any surprises? Is there anything that really surprised you, when along the way, like looking back, that you just didn't know and wouldn't expect about your own professional journeys?
I guess, go ahead.
I think for me, it's actually surprising that I'm still in management consulting, because I think coming in, I had this broad vision. I would do it for a couple years, as we've talked about. It's long hours and it has its first set of professional demands that are placed on you. So I figured I'll do it a couple of years and then transition to something else, right? That was always at the back of my mind. And I think back now in terms of what's kept me in the profession, and still, traveling, because I do travel, and working the long hours, which it ebbs and flows, which I definitely want to put that on the table. But there is that need of serving your clients and being responsive and engaged. So that comes with, hours that need to be fulfilled from that perspective. But going back to the point I was trying to make is, I'm still in this profession because I think I'm learning, I'm growing, and the opportunities to really broaden my horizons and the professional that I want to become is made available to you, right? Just given the nature of what we do. So that's the one thing that I would say to some extent is a bit surprising about my journey, is I didn't think I was going to be in this particular field as long as I've been to date.
Thank you so much, Falake. And then Russell, you had a response as well?
Well, Yeah, I guess it's just kind of an observation that I've kind of made recently. I guess in my early career, I loved being the smartest person in the room. I love people kind of looking to me, saying, "Oh, he's going to have ideas. He knows everything about this." I guess what I love about my career now is when I'm not the smartest person in the room. And quite frequently, I'm far from it. If I'm in a room of data scientists, if I'm in a room of true experts in an area, I may have ideas, but they have knowledge, and honestly, it's just so much fun being out of my depth. And every day I feel like I have catch up to do, and I love doing that catch up. And I guess that was kind of a surprising realization, where in the beginning, I said my career, I went to a helicopter company and I studied computer science and whatever, because I wanted to own that area. I don't feel like I could ever own management consulting. I don't even think my corner of consulting, I could even come close to doing that. Because I guess I've been doing this for just over a decade. Was doing private sector consulting for maybe 5 years before that, and then industry work before that. And I guess at this point, I always feel like when I'm at a new assignment, or even frankly the same assignment, that there's something different. There's something that I've never seen before, and frankly don't understand. And I love that. So I guess I'm surprised about how much I love not knowing things. So
That's awesome. Thanks, Russell. Daniel, did you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I guess a surprise for me along the way in my career is that at a certain point, I found myself being a jack of all trades and master of none, if you will. And I think that was the aftermath of moving around and jumping from one project to another, just to fulfill my desire to do different things, try different things. But that was a real surprise, because at that point, I sort of had a crisis, like a career crisis of myself about what do I know well, what do I do well, and what are my skill sets, and what industry do I know well. So from that point on, I sort of had to define my own definition of what industry I like to focus on and what skill set I like to develop more of, and what kind of projects I want to do more of. So that's something that no one really has told me about consulting, but I kind of figure out along the way on my own. And yeah, that was a real surprise.
Thank you. So we got a couple questions in the chat, I think, and Russell already answered one, but one of the questions was, what are travel requirements for each of you? So Falaka, you've referenced needing to travel. How often do you need to travel?
So thanks to COVID, things have changed, right? It depends. It's not the traditional Monday through Thursday schedule that we've grown accustomed to in management consulting. It depends on what the client's needs are. So my current client, we're probably traveling once every other week, and it's spending just a couple days at the client. In that, to address specific, be it needs around, moving the project forward. So it really depends, but I know that at Deloitte, one of the big things we're focused on is, making it, making the decision to travel where and when it makes sense, and being able to adapt to the individual team members' preferences as well. So you could have teams that, are working remotely, or they're just a few team members that are traveling. So things have changed. I think it's really disrupted what that looks like right now.
Yeah, and it might change it forever, right? Because I think a lot has been, made clear about what's possible, in terms of being productivity virtually. Daniel, do you travel?
I do not. I haven't traveled for a while.
Okay.
Because of the industry that I'm in.
Right.
I mean, it's like some of my friends who work in healthcare, who work in management consulting for healthcare industry. And if they're located in Boston, they almost never travel, right? So I feel like my clients are all kind of centrally located here in the Washington, D.C. area. Sometimes I would have to drive to maybe like Pax River, or, I mean, I had to travel to West Virginia, but I would always drive there. But yeah, I mean, it was always kind of local for me, maybe 2-3 hours drive at most. But our company recently announced that we're going to be sort of in this permanent hybrid model where you would the associates would only be required to come in for specific meetings.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I think that's the way that we're going to operate moving forward. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so I guess that's great. Well, I guess one of the takeaways is, there's also this, general idea that management consultants do have to travel all the time. And that's not necessarily the case. Depends on where you are. Jeff,
Right.
I see that your hand is raised. Thanks for raising your hand.
I do, and thank you so much for this is a great show, and I want to acknowledge Yvette here for everybody. It's the first time as a board member. I just love what you're doing. This is fantastic, and the guests are really good. So I had a question for you. So back in my day when I was at SOM, I'd done some work at Booz Allen and so forth, and all these consulting firms, they mop up the best and brightest of all the peer group schools and so forth, like yourselves at Yale. I'm interested in hearing any time your Yale-ness, your Yale experience gave you real advantage, and maybe sometimes it didn't. Any thoughts on that, where Yale played a role in where you are, what you're doing, strength in getting into a situation, or somehow left you exposed?
Panelists, did any of you want to take a crack at that? Looks like no one's raising their hands. Falake?
It wasn't a trick question.
Well, it's a really great question, Jeff. I think for me, it's networking. So I joined a practice not too long ago, and what I did was I looked for, Yale alums that are in the practice and used that as an opportunity to just get, their perspective on how I need to think about my transition into the practice. Are there opportunities that I need to be focused on, things of that nature. So it's more a connection point from a networking perspective, and using that as a way to build community, quite frankly. So that's how I've leveraged my my Yale community.
Thanks, Falake. And I think in addition to that, I mean, it's really hard to measure this, but I know in my professional journey that I am so confident that just having the name Yale on my resume, I personally, I never really struggled, thankfully, knock on wood, I never had a hard time finding a job or anything like that. And there's just no question in my mind, even though no one said, well, you got this job because you went to Yale. There's just no question that sets us apart when people are reviewing alternative resumes, right? Or even in proposals, when our names are, when we're pitched as key resources on a proposal for a client. I mean, these things, they just, I do think they matter, or that's my experience. Daniel, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah. I want to provide a little bit of a different perspective on that, because I felt like, because Yale carries such strong brand.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I need to make sure that I live up to the standard that Yale has already set for me, right? The Yale community and its alumni in the past has set for me. So I feel that pressure all the time, and I think that kind of helps me to drive myself a little bit better, to deliver better work. But yeah, I feel that sometimes. Maybe that's a
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah, clients are paying good money for consulting services, and of course they see a Yale resume, they'll like to bring somebody in. But once you're in, then you gotta really kind of live up to that.
You gotta deliver.
Yeah, that's right.
You gotta deliver on the name.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. So we actually have a question in the chat. And I think this is a great one. Is there ever a point when it is too late to enter the field of consulting? For example, is it something you could start after completing a PhD program or later in life as a second career? Russell, I see you nodding your head. Can you share your
So this
perspective
is
on
about
this?
my third or fourth career. And it's actually after about 3 or 4 degrees. Most recently, I was in a PhD program, but I left because my daughter was born in the middle of comps, which apparently is not conducive to taking them. But the general idea is no, it's never too late. There may be, you may have to be willing to prove yourself with long hours as a junior person. But as a general rule, if you have a PhD, you're going to be assigned fairly senior roles from the get-go. I can't speak to other areas, but I know in my area, if you have never set foot on a government site, if you've never done consulting, and you've done all of your work in industry, but you have a PhD, as long as it's fairly relevant or can be phrased in a relevant way in your resume to whatever the role that you're being proposed for, you can get in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think, and there's a lot of people who are ex-government, ex-military, who when they retire, they find their way into consulting. And sometimes that's not until their 50s, 60s. Sometimes it's much earlier. So I cannot speak about other areas, but I know in my area, there's no expiration date.
I love that, no expiration date. Any of the other panelists want to add anything on that?
No, I would agree. I think I have colleagues who this is their second career, so to speak, and I think they actually show up differently and are able to add a lot of value just given their prior experiences and, you know, the industry insights that they have. So all that is to say, I think, you know, folks who've had a previous career or more specifically have been in academia and, you know, want to make that transformation, they actually have a good chance at bringing a very different perspective and skill set to the various, you know, consulting firms that are out there. And so there is, you know, there's an opportunity out there based on what I've seen to date.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. And thanks for that question. We have a question from Corinne, my fellow co-producer. Corinne, do you want to unmute yourself and share your question with the panelists? And
Sure. Thank you guys for doing this. This is super interesting and informative. A question that I had for you, and I think, Russell, this is probably most relevant to you, but I don't know, you know, thinking about the business development aspect of things, right? You run your own firm, you're responsible for generating the business. How do you source your clients? And, you know, and any advice you have about just general business development and management consulting would be super interesting and helpful.
So I guess there's different levels that I can answer that on, but they all come down to networking. It really all comes down to putting yourself and asking the right questions of the right people and then being connected to someone who has an opportunity. That happened when I was doing private sector consulting. It especially happens in government consulting. My company right now is subcontractors. We do not have any prime contracts right now, hopefully soon. And so the reason why I say different levels is obviously the opportunities come in at 2 levels. They come in from the government in the form of market surveys and RFPs, RFIs, BAAs, things like that. But they also come on the opportunity of networking with other companies to find out what do they need. You know, be a management consultant with other management consultants. Find out what their problems are. Are they missing skills? Do they have an upcoming contract that they can't staff? So there's a number of contracts that my company recently got on because they needed compliance people. They needed people who knew both the engineering side in the legal side. Well, there's not a ton of people who know both of those. There was also a number of other things that you find out what the pain point is, and that's kind of repeats whether you're talking about a client or finding business. Pound the pavement. So.
I'll jump in there real quick. So kind of going back to the question of what was one of your surprises, right? And I never knew that as you move up in management consulting, you have to learn to sell really well.
Yeah.
And it's something that I continue to struggle with and try to learn more about. And Karen, I think that's really what your question is right on point with all management consultants who are probably manager, senior manager, director level and above, partners. We all have to sell, right? And one of the things that gives me a lot of advantage for me personally working for Gartner is the fact that we source a lot of our clients through our conference and expo events, like symposiums. We host a lot of those. So we bring a lot of people in-house at our venue to share insights that our analysts and researchers generate. And when they come into our house, we have a lot of, not, what's the right word? A lot of ways to meet with them privately. So when we do get an opportunity to meet with them privately, that's when we start to talk about their issues and problems, their biggest concerns, and we bring experts to the table. And as a team, we have an opportunity to sell. So that's a real upside for me that I found working for my new employer. Before that, it was a lot of it was watching the market, waiting for the solicitation to drop, hearing from the streets about what's being dropped and kind of getting ready for it and responding to the solicitations. But yeah, I mean, you definitely gotta have, connections like Russell said, and it's tough.
Yeah.
Not everyone has friends at the, SES or, flag level. It's tough.
That was such a great question, Karim, because honestly, I bet we could do a whole hour session on these sort of business development best practices, right?
Let's do it.
Yeah, we really could. And Russell, I'd love to add to that, but we actually have 3 other questions in the chat. We got 7 minutes. So what I'd like to do is a lightning round for me. What each of you, I'm going to say the question, one of you tells me which one wants to answer. We're going to get through these real quick so we can answer them all. All right. So one question was, would you say that your major plays a large part in your quality as an applicant to jobs? So this must be somebody coming out, a current student. Who wants to grab that one? Russell Falake?
Definitely, from where I sit, it's less about your major. It's more about demonstrating, be it your leadership capabilities based on your involvement on campus and, at Yale. And just demonstrating that, and also showcasing, be it your interests, quite frankly. So it's more, what are you interested in? How is that going to translate in terms of potential projects that we can staff you on? And what kind of leadership have you demonstrated? How do you come across in terms of potentially working on a team, things of that nature? It's really, those are some of the indicators that we look at in terms of potential candidates.
That's awesome. Falake, would you remind me what your undergraduate major was?
Finance and accounting.
Oh, yours was finance as well. And
Yeah.
Daniel, yours was finance?
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. Russell, what was your undergraduate major again?
Classics.
Oh, see, there you go. Mine was sociology with psychology. So yeah, there are more common ones, I'm sure. I'm sure finance is one of the more common ones, but I'm sure it doesn't actually play a part in the applicant decision process. All right, the next question is, are many management consulting jobs heavy on Excel spreadsheet modeling? Russell, what do you think?
So I think PowerPoint is probably the #1 skill that you need, communication in general. But yes, at least in where I am, if you are struggling with Excel, you're gonna have trouble. A lot of the assignments that I have go beyond that and use scripting languages, use statistical languages, or use different visualization tools. There's also in-house kind of proprietary government tools that we use. But the fact is, whether you are a data consultant or not, you will encounter Excel. Because everybody in the business world loves to use Excel like a database. Everyone loves to use Excel for basic analysis. Excel, whether you're talking about the modeling, the scripting, the automation, the analysis, or just communication, is a critical skill.
Thank you so much, Russell. All right, we have one more question. I'm not sure who would be best to answer this, but whoever thinks they might know. It's, do you think a JD from Yale Law School would be seen as a valuable degree to a consulting firm?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes and yes.
I think JD from Yale Law School would be seen as a valuable degree to this world. So,
and they're also, like Russell touched on it, regulatory and compliance, opportunities that we see. I'm working on a project right now that is more M&A related, and there's a legal entity restructuring piece to it. So all that is to say yes and yes. And we do have, at least within my practice, we do have JDs that are currently leading different projects and building the practice as well.
Yeah, and I like to say that especially in government consulting, you need to understand the authorities. You need to understand the policies. You need to understand a lot of things like that. I feel like, because I do not have a JD, that my understanding is imperfect, and I believe that I would do a much better job were I to have one.
Awesome questions and great responses. Thank you so much. Before I forget, Russell, Falake, Daniel, please go ahead and put your contact information, if you feel comfortable, in the chat. For anyone who wants to follow up with you, ask follow-up questions or networking, whatever. So then everyone else, take a look at the chat if you want to get their contact information. And again, I hope Russell, Falake, and Daniel are all on cross campus, because that's another great place to connect with Yale alums. So hopefully sign up on it and connect that way as well. All right, well, I think we have, let's see, Jeff, is there any final remarks anything I missed?
Yeah, no, everything was really good. The one typical thing we do now is first, thanks everyone for joining Must See LA, and let you know next Thursday night there's another show. We've got a channel we're calling the Omnibus, so it could be just about anything from any school within Yale that we're going to showcase. And I was just reading the title here, so you have it. So next week there's going to be Renaissance Women. Carmen Bombeck, Metropolitan Museum of Art curator, will be on, and Stephanie Grilli will be hosting that from the YAA. So come every Thursday. We've got a full suite of shows, we're calling them, throughout the year, and I think we had a great time tonight. You see, the time flies by.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing I just learned, so when you register for one of these Thursday nights, that link that you initially get, that works for every subsequent Thursday night. So you don't have to register again. You could just go back and type in your search careers and find that original link and go to it if you ever want to join us. Well, thank you so much to everyone for joining us, and thanks particularly to our three panelists for just sharing your professional journeys with us. It's been really informative, even for me. And I know two of them, so I'm looking forward to seeing you all again. And yeah, thanks so much for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Us, Yvette. Yeah, have a good one.
Really good job. This was a lot.